What's up, y'all? It's Shuffle, and this is a video about Chaos Zero Nightmare, and we're going to be talking about the Season 2 patch that was put up recently on Stove by Smilegate. And the patch isn't set in stone yet, but we'll take a look at it and go through it, and I'll do my best to explain the context of a lot of it, because since this game came out, I jumped into it a couple weeks after launch, but I've really just love the hell out of this game, so I've been playing it a lot, and I hope I can do what I've done for other games and series in the past, which is just break down some notes and help people understand some of the stuff that's been happening. And so the big focus of this patch, besides, you know, new stuff coming in eventually with Season 2, is that there are going to be some adjustments to quality of life stuff, like save data farming, chaos fatigue as they call it, and some changes for characters, specifically Tressa and Cassius, who have proven to be incredibly powerful in Season 1. So they're getting adjusted, mostly nerfed, some buffs, but mostly nerfs, and some other characters are getting a couple adjustments as well, usually positive, and we'll go through that here. So buckle up. The patch notes are quite extensive for this. All right, I'm not going to read the whole thing verbatim, because this would be like an hour-and-a-half video if I did that. So just going over it, they're explaining a lot of their logic here, why they're changing things. They're talking about save data kind of being a pain in the ass to farm, and with faint memory specifically, which is a mechanic where you can't make your deck too powerful too easily. So if you're playing like easy content, like under level 70, or if you're playing only, you know, like level 80, and most teams with a lot of investment can run over level 80 pretty easily. So they don't want you farming super good decks for, you know, little challenge, which is why they had the tier system. And faint memory. So if you're a newer player and you never knew what the hell faint memory meant on your save data, it means what you are allowed to keep when you beat the chaos run. If you go over the faint memory cap, the game will, I believe it's random, it will start kicking out stuff and reverting changes to the deck until it gets back under the cap. So if you ever beat a run and go, what happened to my cool epiphanies, that's what happened. They're going to make this less irritating to deal with. And one of the things that a lot of us, myself included, used either for, you know, up until now, or just used for a while, was external websites, or were external websites and tools. There are quite a few of them now, and a lot of them are really good. Some of them kind of suck ass, but you could use those websites to track your save data, so that way you would know if you're going to go over the cap or not. And they don't want you to have to do that. They don't want you to have to, if you're on your phone, they don't want you to have to minimize the game and then open your browser and then go to a website that's third party and calculate the numbers there. One of the things they talk about is optimal play emerge before even entering chaos, and that's just what's going to happen a lot of the times with a game like this. Is with various options on cards, you're going to know what you're going to try and go for when you go in. You might try and brute force a specific deck by dumping all the epiphanies on that person, but regardless, they want it to feel more organic in you going through a run and making different choices, trying new stuff, instead of going, this is like a meta deck, and I see everyone on the leaderboard with it, and so I have to farm this now. Don't get it twisted, that's still going to happen, but they want to alleviate that pressure. We'll see if they do. So with save data, it'll be calculated based on additional elements acquired beyond a base save data consisting of 8 cards. So the 8 cards the character gets to themselves. Removing cards other than starting cards does not grant points. That's pretty cool. So if you ever wanted to do, for instance, one trick would be, if you want to make sure that you get a dupe chance on someone's specifics card, you could remove another character's card to lower the variance between you and that other thing. So it sounds more complicated than it is, but really, you know, if someone had, for instance, Mika with Whirlpool, if you didn't want to have a chance of duping Whirlpool, you could remove it, and then you have a smaller percentage chance to get something else because you took something else out of the possibilities. Each starting card is now only 20 points instead of before where it was, I believe, 20 for the first, 30 the second, and then 50 the third. So that's how it totaled 100. Now removing all of your starting cards only costs 60. That's a huge, fantastic change. Transforming a card is also treated as removal, understandably. Limits on removal and duplication will be added. So each save data, you can dupe it up to 4 times. And I'm not sure if this was possible to go higher anyway, unless some of the save data changes they're putting in are going to make it happen. Because usually you would get the 2 boss dupes and then like a dupe event in the chaos. So that's how you got 4 copies on 1 card. And that seemed like the max anyway, so I don't think anyone's really going to notice this. Removal is limited to a max of 5. Again, it's uncommon for people to remove 5 of a deck's cards, although there were some Rei decks where they took everything out except literally 3 and had the thinnest deck possible. Hopefully all of this makes chaos grinding a bit less irritating and a little more fun to interact with, because chaos is fun. It's a really fun thing to play. It's like one of the highlights of the game. But it does suck when you get past like the first boss, for instance, and when you see what your dupe choices are, you're like, well, this run's just screwed. And it's either bail out now and redo the Zero System Codex, or finish it and spend the next 30 minutes or whatever, 20 to 35 minutes just kind of hating it because you got nothing you're going after. Even after Season 2, Faint Memories will continue to be refined. That's good. Balance adjustments. This is the big one, and there are quite a few. So they wanted to focus on combatant reworks, combatant improvements, partner improvements, memory fragment improvements, which I didn't expect the memory fragments to get changed. That's really nice because some of the underperforming sets are getting buffed. Adjustments to select equipment and common cards. Some of these are nerfs in the case of Wanderer of the Void, which was pretty busted. First adjustments are Tressa and Cassius. There's a whole lot of text here that boils down to Tressa had too many agony buffs at one time because it's stacked individually. So she could stack up to an infinite amount, and then they'd all proc, and then they'd proc again, they'd all fall off, and that's how it happened. So the first change is they want to make it just more readable so you don't have this giant string of debuffs going all the way down the enemy. And they're going to consolidate it into one giant stack with a number. The disadvantage, presumably, would be that it only ticks 1 time, and if you stack this up to, 100 times like you could do before, the fight's not going 100 turns or 50 turns, so you'd have to wait the whole time. But what they ended up doing is making it so no matter how high the stack is, up to a point, half of it's going to trigger and it'll count down from there. So if you have 30 stacked on something, it's going to count 15, and then next turn, I guess half again, and just kind of reduce that way. The cap they're imposing though is 20. So you can only activate 20 stacks of agony at any time. So that is a nerf to Tressa damage. She's the only person right now that can just pump out tons of agony at one time. So the point where the Cursed Corpse set of gear was really good, but it was kind of hard to get agony triggers on anyone outside of Tressa. So now that's getting a bit nerfed in terms of the dot damage, the damage over time of agony. I'm really curious how the agony cutting in half over and over is going to work, because even at middle amounts, 6, it'll be 6 down to 3 down to 2 down to 1. So your stack of 6 wears off in 4 turns or maybe 3 depending on rounding. So I'm not saying it's bad. I just looking at it, I'm sure there's gonna be some kind of weird set of rounding for certain values where, losing half each time is gonna either add turns or subtract turns, and it's gonna feel weird. But ultimately it's not gonna matter that much, just because when you get agony stacked up to like 30 or 50 or 100, I mean, they're dead anyway in a couple turns, so it's not major. But yeah, you can only proc 20 at a time now. Shadow Dagger, this was the main culprit of all of this massive agony stacking for Tressa. And you're going to see that Shadow Daggers and ways to make Shadow Daggers are getting nerfed, mostly because that's what Tressa was doing. But that was kind of her niche as well. With that said, they are changing the daggers a little bit. So instead of 2 agony, they're going to proc 1. So it's 1 agony per hit, but they're also increasing the damage of Shadow Dagger from 50% damage to 80. Overall, this is a nerf just because agony damage was way more than an extra 30% per hit, but it does open up Tressa for different options, and it lets her focus on things like crit more, where the on-hit damage of the dagger is a bit more relevant. So it is a nerf, but it opens up options, and it should hopefully be a little more fun if you didn't just want to, meta slave and spam Shadow Daggers off healing. Advanced Shadow Dagger. This card was not that good. Like, if you ever played Chaos, the moment you can kind of ignore Advanced Shadow Dagger and start, spamming regular Shadow Dagger, this thing just stopped being relevant. And it was the cost. The one cost made it feel like crap. So now instead of Retain and Retrieve, it's being changed to a 0 cost, Retain and Exhaust. The Advanced Dagger does 2 agony, does 50% of your damage instead of 100, but it gets plus 10% damage amount for each agony on the target. And I'm wondering how that's going to interact with the new way that it stacks. I'm assuming that it would have to be, since it doesn't spread out over multiple stacks. For instance, if you have 10 agony on the target, it should do 100% extra damage. So again, it's more on-hit damage that is being focused on, and that should be helpful for different builds in terms of variety, as well as making Advanced Shadow Dagger not feel like a dead weight card. This Unsheathed Dagger epiphany was a bit of a strange one to me, because creating 2 Shadow Daggers, and it increases the agony effect of each Shadow Dagger by 3. Okay, never mind. I thought it said 2-3, so it was like, from 2 agony to 3 agony. I was like, that's not a big jump, but actually it was going from 2 to 5. So yeah, that would be pretty substantial. And then on the other side, it says create 2 Shadow Daggers. This is the adjusted version. Increase the agony effect of the created Shadow Dagger by 2 instead of 3. So now, instead of you going from 2 to 5 on the old version, it goes from 1 to 3. So that is a pretty substantial nerf in terms of agony. And I do want to be able to show some of this in game. I'm getting kind of just lost in the sauce with the actual notes. But if we look at Tressa with Unsheath, this is a pretty good card, and it had some nice epiphanies. Like, it was kind of hard to go wrong with whichever you picked, because either it costs 0, which is nice. It still costs 1, but you get 3. Not bad. Probably one of the lesser utilized ones. The middle one, you get 1 Shadow Dagger per turn, which is still good. It's not as powerful as the healing Shadow Reload, obviously, but it's still pretty good. And then this is the one they nerfed right here. So instead of increasing it by 3, it's going to be 2 now. Otherwise, the rest of them are unchanged. So if you had a favorite one before, I like the Create 4 and Exhaust because it pulled it out of the deck. So if you never use this one, you're not going to notice. But maybe I'll try it now. I don't know. All of these Shadow Reload epiphanies got changed because this was the problem card. And they wanted to make this more usable and fun and diverse instead of just being, I didn't hit the heal Shadow Reload before the boss and I couldn't dupe it, so the run's over, I need to restart, So instead of what we had before, these all changed to be a little bit different. Pretty much everything got buffed except for the heal one, which got just removed. It's not even nerfed, it's just removed entirely. For the first epiphany of reload, this is going down from 2 cost to 1, which is perfectly fine. That's a really good change. There are quite a few characters right now that have things that for some reason cost way more than it feels like they should, like even if it's just +1. Malin has a couple cards like that where, you know, her unity of attack and defense, it'll change to like a 2 cost, and it's like, why is this a 2 cost? You know, it's an upgrade and they're trying to balance it around that, I guess, but it just, you know, it feels kind of bad. So this one's going to cost 1 instead of 2, which honestly is going to help out a lot because Tressa, one of her things is she's just a really low cost character to run, so everyone else can spend their AP on stuff. The second reload is going from cost 1, heal for 100, and create 2 advanced shadow daggers to costing 0, healing for 150 instead of 100, and it only creates 1 advanced dagger, but the advanced daggers are buffed. The third epiphany is going from create X amount of shadow daggers to create X cards, each randomly chosen to either be a regular shadow dagger or an advanced one. And that's, I don't know if that's going to make that one usable because the third one is a bit tricky. You know, anything that costs X, obviously you want to dump your entire turn into, but at the same time, you don't want to dump your entire turn into one card. The fact that it's also randomly generated in terms of do you get a regular shadow dagger or an advanced one is probably going to be a bit frustrating because there's going to be times where you specifically want, you know, a ton of advanced daggers, and instead of that, you just get regulars or vice versa. The fourth shadow reload, this was the broken one. This is where all the insane Tressa decks that could kill a boss in, I don't know, like 3 turns, like pretty much Serennial before Serennial came out. And this is where it all happened. So this is the card you would dupe because it wasn't unique. I'm actually surprised they didn't just put a unique tag on it because that would have made it a lot easier to manage while still keeping it at the same time if you like doing that. But instead, they decided to just change it entirely. It's not an upgrade anymore, it's going to become a skill. And it says exhaust all shadow daggers in hand, then create an advanced shadow dagger for each exhausted one. I'm not sure how good this is going to be just because they're already taking away a ton of the options, at least, to generate a ton of shadow daggers quickly. So instead, every time you play this, you're probably going to hit, you know, maybe 2 to 5 at a time, which is still not bad. Again, compared to Serennial, even though she is a limited 5-star, where Serennial can fill your entire hand with lasers, Tressa could do that with daggers, but now Tressa can't, while Serennial still can. So we'll have to see what ends up happening with these playstyles, but I don't know if Reload 4 is going to be that popular just looking at it. The fifth reload is getting a very small buff, like a very, very small buff. And instead of Exhaust 1, where it goes away the first time you play it, it's going to have Exhaust 2, which means you have to play it twice before it exhausts out of the deck. So you get to play it twice per copy instead of once. So it's, you know, it's a good increase, but you have to like this one also. Next we have Vital Attack, which is normally a fine card, but it did have one very strong variant, and that was the third one, which is the one you see on screen, and that was the one that increases agony damage by 50% for 1 turn. This could do so much extra damage, and I'm not sure why it calculated this way, but I actually think it ended up almost doubling, if not doubling, the agony damage instead for that turn. Because, for instance, I remember having my agony ticks at the time do about 62 damage, and then this would bump it up to like 124, which is double. There could have been some other external factor, but that's just what I remember seeing. I haven't played Tressa in a little bit here. But otherwise, it was super powerful. The more agony you had, the more damage this would scale. Otherwise, it was super powerful, so whenever you'd be able to play this, it would just add so much extra damage to your agony stacks. And it's getting adjusted, and now it's going to cost 1 instead of 2, and it's going to give you 2 to 6 agony. Or at least that's how it's written, 2-6. And I'm hoping that doing that is not like super randomized, because if I hit this attack and it can do 2 or 6 and I get 2 or 3 instead of like 5 and 6, I'm gonna kind of mauled. So I would hope that it's at least consistent. Curse Gouge was a cool card. It got a change here. So instead of 2 Agony Imprints, which Agony and Agony Imprint were different and kind of a weird differentiation anyway, but it activates all the agony on the target at that time. So that can be a nice kind of in Darkest Dungeon they call it dot bombs. So like whenever you have damage over time and you blow it up for immediate damage, you know, like you take all the bleed damage that they have already and you just front load it and do it right there instead of waiting for it. That's what's going to happen with this. So anytime you hit them with Curse Gouge, it's just going to pop the agony on them already. I'm going to assume it still caps at 20 like the other mechanics, but we'll have to get confirmation on that. The devs here go into detail about the Tressa changes. They explain why they changed the agony stacking and the Shadow Dagger mechanics. And just looking at it, I don't know if a 30% bump in these damages is going to be enough to, you know, make it worthwhile. But Shadow Dagger isn't supposed to be an insane powerhouse card. It's supposed to be something that, like, it's good, consistent damage, because you can make a bunch of them at one time and they cost nothing. So they shouldn't be that strong. And they were too strong at 2 Agony. I'm not going to deny that, but I'm wondering, like, if they wanted to keep that same power level, I don't think 30% per hit's enough. But like I said, it remains to be seen. And Advanced Shadow Dagger is likely going to become the superior option just reading this. And so this gives you your 2 agony still, although you don't get the 2x2. And you get 10% bonus damage per agony on the target. So you still want to stack as much as you can, and then throw advanced daggers at them, and then use like Curse Gouge. That's what you're going to be looking for, I assume. And it makes sense with what they're trying to do, making it so agony only comes in, you know, hits of 1 instead of 2, because it says they want Tressa to not reach the 20 stack too fast, because otherwise it's what they say is a loss in expected damage output. And the second part here, talking about Advanced Shadow Dagger having a low usage rate, it says due to feel related issues. It's really just because it costs 1, and you know, you'd spend it and it had retrieve, so you'd spend it once, it would hit the graveyard, come back to your hand, and it would cost 1 again. And so you're spending 2 AP for something that doesn't do a whole lot compared to a 0 cost Shadow Dagger. So it's not, I would say it's not so much a feels related issue, it's just the fact that it costs 1. It was too costly for what the character's trying to do, because she's supposed to be about cheap, efficient card generation that she spends like on her turn. Unsheath, they only changed 1, so we'll see if they change any of the others or if what they have is already enough. And then for Shadow Reload, it's saying what, you know, I was mentioning before, is the 4th one, which is the heal one, was the only one people played. And they could have done some other different changes with it, but they opted to just rework it entirely, and that's fine. And we'll see how much better this is in terms of play diversity or like deck diversity going forward. Vital Attack, as I said, like the other 4 epiphanies were fine. It's just that 3rd one where it scales the damage really hard, that had to be changed, understandably. The effect of Curse Gouge will be changed. Previously, it was used to significantly increase the amount of agony applied to the target. Under the revised agony mechanics, the card will be reworked to feature a new unique attribute that leverages the agony instead. So pretty much they took the 50% bonus damage for agony out of the Vital Attack epiphany, and they just put it into Curse Gouge, and you just, you know, bomb them that way with it. So we'll see how it is. A lot of these sound pretty cool. Again, a lot of them are nerfs, but we'll have to see how they work out in practice, because things can look bad on paper, but people will surprise you with how clever they can be and when they find certain combos for stuff. So Cassius got it a lot nicer than Tressa. Tressa got a big hit, and I think it's partly because, you know, maybe because she's a 4-star and they don't want you know, some 4-star that you start with to be the best damage dealer or one of the best damage dealers out there. Understandably, they want you to pull. But with the stuff for Cassius, he was a really efficient... Cassius was like a hybrid damage dealer and a card draw engine. He didn't support in the traditional sense. Cassius did not really heal you that efficiently. The whole thing for Cassius was to help you draw out the deck, and then when you've drawn out the deck and you've played all your upgrades and stuff, he contributes to damage or more draw so you can fish to the big damage cards faster. That's what he was doing before. And so they're making it so that Cassius can now heal a little more easily and even lower stress. So he's closer to a more traditional support. And in concept, I like that because Cassius and Nia, as we're going to see later, were kind of hard to run through tougher chaos because they didn't provide a whole lot of healing. So with Cassius, with the quest cards now, because the quest cards don't trigger the quest criteria. They don't trigger themselves, essentially. And the change now is when conditions are met, you make a quest card, and they added that you heal for 80% of a fixed amount 3 times per turn. So you make 3 quest cards in a turn, Cassius heals you for 240% fixed, which is a pretty good amount considering that Narja came out, and Narja's like a pretty good DPS for a controller that also can spam a ton of heal because of veracity. So we actually have someone else that kind of fits that, but Cassius has way more card draw compared to Narja. We'll actually bring up Cassius here too, since we have it. And the quest cards are currently these. So we had 000, which would make a 000 card. So this is the quest. And this one would be 40% bonus damage for each attack card used this turn. Sounds like it can be pretty good because most decks that don't spam a ton of damage cards at one time because of AP limits meant that Cassius was, you know, chipping in for one of these cards and it did a good, 160 to, like 320% damage or something. But when you pair it with Tressa and Serenial, who can generate an almost unlimited amount of 0-cost attack cards, the damage on 000 could be up to plus 1,000% damage or higher. During the Season 1 events, I remember having one of the boss fights where I had Cassius and I think it was Serenial on the team. It got to the point where when I started burning the 000s because I ran out of everything else and they cost 0 themselves and they were attacks, so I think they fed into each other. Like Cassius was throwing these 000 cards at a boss and it would do, no joke, like 3,000 damage, non-crit. So these cards got absolutely out of control. Compared to 111, which is just some damage and healing, 111 was fine. Like, almost no one picked 111 for their quest cards if they had a choice. And this is where Cassius got some healing too, and this card was fine. There's no change. The card for straight meant you had to play a 0-cost, a 1-cost, and a 2-cost. It didn't have to be sequential, so it could be like a 2, then a 0, then a 1. And the card you got for it was buffs. So you got 2 morale, 2 resolve, 2 fortitude for that turn. Pretty good card overall, but getting all those 2 costs and 1 cost consistently proved to be a little bit difficult because a lot of the time you're trying to lower your AP costs during the fight. So a lot of stuff would go from costing 2 to 1 or 1 to 0, which is why 000 would always be way better. And full house. So full house is you play 1 card from each person and then you get a card that cycles. So you just get this draw, exhaust, and ephemeral, meaning if you don't play it, it's gone, and if you do play it, it draws 1 and it's gone. So for our boy Cassius here, that means that with 000, there's now a damage cap. So instead of having infinite amounts, instead of being able to get over 1,000% bonus damage, now you can only get up to 4 extra times. So these cards hit for 200% bonus damage, max. And that's okay, it chips in, but it's not, oppressive almost at that point. And we're seeing the changes with the empowered versions as well. So as far as these are concerned, just add a little bit more to the value. So for 000, instead of plus 40, it's plus 50. 111 got buffed. And instead of being 90 and 90 for damage and heal, it's now 150 and 150. And then if you have the empowered version, it's 200 and 200%. Full House did what it did before. And I like that they buffed it in a way that makes it more support focused, but it's like chaos run support focused. So it's still going to be really powerful for drawing through the deck, but since it heals 2 stress on a random person now, it's going to be a lot more valuable when you're running chaos, because if you're doing events and boss battles and simulations or whatever, stress doesn't usually matter, which makes this buff pretty much just for chaos. And I actually think that's a pretty clever thing to do, where it's only stronger in one situation, which is helping you farm the deck itself. And I think that's a pretty cool way to do it. With Dice Trick, there was the base version. So I guess all of Dice Trick got changed. And starting off, the first one, or at least the original, is actually getting buffed to where it reduces morale on the enemy for 1 turn. This is actually pretty good because Cassius already reduces morale with his ego skill, so being able to just lower the effective damage you're taking, you know, mitigating it in a different way instead of shielding it and then healing it or whatever. This is cool too. I like this type of stuff. And let's actually bring up his Dice Trick. I can find... There it is. So yeah, that's the original. And they're just going to add a second line in here. And then we'll look at the Epiphs. Here's the original Dice Trick. It's just going to have the extra line after it about the morale changes. And so we'll look at the Epiphs too. With, I think all of these are getting changed. They are. The first Epiphany, where it does all the extra damage, it's going to change to where it also increases the reduced morale for 1 turn. So that's pretty cool. The second Epiphany also getting buffed, and it's just getting the same treatment. It's getting the decreased morale for 1 turn. The third one actually is also getting the reduced morale. So these first 3, which aren't that popular for picks, are getting changed to be a little bit stronger in terms of damage mitigation. So I think that's a pretty cool idea. For the third Epiphany, all it's getting added is that the bonus damage caps at 5 instead of infinitely. So we don't have any more infinite scaling because that is proving to be an issue. Dice Trick number 4, this is kind of what I was expecting they do with Shadow Reload for healing, is they put the unique tag on it, which I'm going to be honest is pretty confusing. I wish they'd change this because it's considered a unique card, which is different from when it has a unique tag. So unique card means it's just the character's card. It belongs to them, and it's one of the ones they unlock, and it's cool, and whatever. Unique means you can't dupe it when it's on top of the card. Right here is the keyword. So that's what they're doing. And like I said, I thought they'd do that for Shadow Reload 4, just make it so you can't dupe it, but they're only doing it to this, or the 4th Dice Trick. And the 5th one is also getting the unique treatment. So I believe they're just going to be the same, except you can't dupe them anymore. And honestly, that's okay. So we'll see how it goes going forward. But between the 2 of them, I think Cassius came out like a lot more in piece, or in one piece, so to speak. You know, Tressa got a lot of adjustments. They completely removed one of her defining meta strategy, and Cassius just got some stuff where he pretty much does the same stuff that he wants to, and he has a little more healing and stress healing in his kit, which is nice, but there are just caps that he should have. Like, he should have had these caps before anyway, so he can't just get out of control and throws some really powerful dumbass cards, you know, at the end of the turn after you played 30 others. Next, they're releasing a new item called the Flash of Possibility, and everyone's going to get 3 of these for free after the Season 2 update hits. It looks to be a mythic tier item, so I would not spend these haphazardly, because what they're going to do, as we can see down here, is you use it on a completed save data, and you can choose a card to get a unique epiphany, and then apply that to the desired card, which means that you can fine-tune some save data. And the reason I'm saying to save these is because it is a new item and they're going to be obtainable, but we don't know what the frequency of it's going to be. We don't know how often we're going to see them. It could be like the Omega code from Season 1, which was only in the shop on the second wave, and that's the only Omega code we've ever seen. So being able to save that type of stuff is usually beneficial. The other hand is if you do have a deck where you just need one epiph change, just one, and you're like, I really want this to be this instead, then you get to do that. So don't spend 3 on one deck. At that point, rerun the chaos. Don't bother with trying to spend these to fix it. Also, save these for endgame. If you're picking up gear that's 3 stars, don't use the Flash of Possibility on it because you still want the high level gear too. As far as what unique epiphanies are, it's these, the core 5, that every card that can get an epiphany gets. You may have seen it, or you may not have seen it, or you may not have paid attention, but there are also what we call generic epiphanies. Those are the ones where when you get the card and you get a choice on it, you end up getting something that's like add 2 morale. And that kind of stuff is like right here. This is one. So this is a generic epiphany. It's the same card, but for 1 turn I get 2 morale. And the game throws these in pretty much every time you get an epiphany. And it's kind of irritating because instead of the system being 1 generic and like 2 unique epiphanies to make all 3, you can get 2 generic and 1 unique epiphany. And that feels really bad because your choices become 1 fortitude for 1 turn, or 1 resolve for 1 turn, or an epiphany you didn't want because it's not going to fit what you're making. And so that's why I'm saying make sure to save the items just in case, so you don't have to throw them around and waste them right away, just in case they're not common. Something nice here is that if the card has the Divine Epiphany, you can re-roll it to get the unique epiphany, but keep the divine effects. So if your divine effect is, for instance, giving you 1 AP when you spend the card, you get to keep that. You just have to change what the unique epiphany is, and that's really cool. So that's very player-sided in terms of favoritism, and that's really nice. Through this, we plan to gradually reduce chaos fatigue that can arise from the unique epiphany selection process. It would ultimately be better if they did something like what I said, where you get 2 uniques guaranteed and then like 1 generic possibility, and not the chance of 2 generics and 1 unique, because that feels bad. Or maybe make it 4 choices or something like that. Just making it an item that you have to get by playing the game is understandable, but at the same time, that means you have to keep grinding for stuff as well. It shouldn't be as bad as it has been, though. Since they are nerfing or reworking, adjusting, pretty much Tressa's getting nerfed, but Cassius just getting still nerfed, but like reined in on power level. Like, they didn't touch Joker, which is his card that lets him pull anything that hasn't been used that turn. So they didn't touch that, which is nice. But regardless, both of them will be at the point where if you want to uninvest in them because you're unhappy with what they did, you get the ability to do that and pull all of your resources back out of them. What I'm curious about, and if this hits live, like if they didn't see this and it hits live, I'm 99% certain they're going to immediately figure it out and get rid of it. But on the off chance they don't, what I'm wondering is, as you level characters from 1 to 60, you get these rewards. You know, if you can only get them 1 time, then they covered their own ass. But what I'm wondering is, what happens if you do reverse all the upgrades and they go back to level 1? Do these unlock again? I doubt it, but it would be hilarious if they did, because you can get some extra currency that way. In the patch, I was just expecting Tressa and Cassius changes, but they're actually doing a few quick changes for other characters, and that's actually really good news. because sometimes when you play various video games, and this doesn't apply just to, you know, like Chaos Zero Nightmare or some other gacha game or like a AAA game, whatever, like any game runs into this problem where it can feel like the people that make the game don't actually play the damn game, so they don't understand really what's happening and what needs to be fixed and how to fix it. However, from these notes, it does seem like the devs play their own freaking game, and I'm very happy to see that, because they're understanding that even though they're changing those two characters, there are quite a few other characters that need a little bit of help. And one of the things that I like reading immediately is, in the current combat environment, where ending battles in the fewest possible turns is prioritized, partly because the devs made it that way. You know, when you go to event missions or the hyperspace, whatever it's called, like, was it Deep Basin Hyperspace? I forget exactly, but the one that refreshes like once a month and you get the green boxes. For example, you have to beat every fight in 12 turns or less if you want like max rewards. And they understand that, which is why they said, you know, where ending battles in the fewest possible turns is prioritized. That's just how it is throughout the entire game. Like, enemies keep buffing themselves, or eventually you're going to fall behind on something, or you're going to miss rewards because you don't kill fast enough. Recognizing this statement here gives me a lot of hope, because it says the Vanguard class has been underperforming compared to others. Yes, Vanguards are characters like Khali, Magna, Amir, where they build up shields and stuff, but playing defensive isn't incentivized in the game. And so they understand that, and they're going to look into making that a better experience. So Vanguard has been underperforming compared to others. While we continue to review the long-term improvement direction and design for the Vanguard class, this adjustment will increase the conditional damage of counterattack to help these combatants perform more efficiently in Season 2. And it's just a small one about counterattack, but it's relieving to know that they're aware of the problem and they're already looking into it. So it's really good. Nia got what appears to be just buffs. So Decibel, her unique mechanic where it stacks up to 5 times, and when you reshuffle the deck, everyone has an attack depending on how much Decibel you have. So they're going to add healing to it to give Nia some extra healing, because her healing game isn't that strong. Same kind of issue that Cassius had, where they're really good for being draw engines and other stuff in the party, but when you're trying to get them the deck in Chaos, they kind of suck because they just don't contribute much without all their stuff and epiphanies. Elasticity will have a higher stack, and the trigger will now be based on the number of stacks. And I guess we'll go find Nia real quick to show what this is referring to. But with Nia, she doesn't get too much elasticity from stuff, but right here, it says when an ally performs an extra attack, heal 50%. Upon activation, lose 1 elasticity, max 2 stacks. So extra attacks come from your rangers, and I believe hunters and the bullets might count as extra attacks, but definitely rangers specifically. That's kind of like the ranger bread and butter if you go look at someone like Hugo, where when you use hunting instincts and he throws the dingoes at people, those are considered extra attacks, as you can see here. With that said, they're going to add elasticity to this card, Soul Rip. This is an Epiphany version, but I'm assuming all versions of it might get like heal this much and then 1 elasticity, which would be cool. I'm down with that, because otherwise it's just on Amp Theory right now, and there's no other way really to get it. So if they want to make that a mechanic that doesn't feel kind of tacked on, it has to be in more places. They talk about using G-Chord, and the change for G-Chord is going to be the decibel gain effect will be increased. I don't know if it's going to be for all of them or the base one, but like this version of G-Chord is already super powerful, where you can check the top 3 in the deck. So I don't know if this one deserves any buffs, but we'll see if it gets that too. Next is Rei, who is an interesting support because she's not so much the traditional heal-focused support. She's more of a character that buffs other people's damage for short term, and that's actually a really fun playstyle. But they're giving her some extra healing through Snack Time, which is her main draw card, where it heals and does stuff. So they're going to give her some bonus healing there. And they're saying that for the basic card potential effect, the critical chance that's added to her regular melee attack is going to be changed to damage-based healing. They're trying to make her less of an offensive-oriented support into something a little more traditional, and I don't actually mind these changes because she's still going to be more of an offensive-focused support thanks to things like Resonating Darkness and being able to buff people's damage short-term or long-term. And having her just get a little more healing involved isn't bad because she's really just there to draw and buff. So she still has that. Orlea, easily the support that needed the most help because even compared to the 4-star, she was kind of lacking. So now she's going to have a base card composition change where instead of having 2 attacks and a heal, she's going to get 1 attack and 2 basic heals when she starts. The chance of generating her creations on cards will be increased. So for example, her regular basic attack cards like 30 or 35%, so it should go up, hopefully to like 50. And that's one thing she's getting. And then the creations themselves, so the little goopy monsters that she makes, they're called like Softy and Swifty and all that. They're gonna get stronger values because they're not bad. Like the max level versions aren't bad because max level Softy's like 20% bonus damage or something, or 25 or 30 even, I can't remember off the top, but that one's pretty good. And the other ones are a little lacking, so they're going to get buffed also to compensate. A better idea is to just show it, but yeah, these are the 3, and they have a 1-star, 2-star, 3-star version, and they get progressively stronger. So Softy is the best one just because it's extra damage, and you don't even have to spend it to get bonus damage. Swifty's like a damage spike at the end of the fight. And Sturdy's kind of an interesting sustain one that you can put up as a shield. So Softy, even Softy could use a buff, but these two are just like the other two. Swifty and Sturdy are just not that good without being max level, and even then they're not that good. So having them get stronger is a really nice thing to do. Growth acceleration, the healing will be increased instead of 51. They didn't say what it will be, but I wouldn't be surprised if it starts at 100. I think that'd be relatively fair since it's a unique card and not like a basic. And then finally, Will of the Light will cost 1 instead of 2. And that's what I was saying before with when they changed Tressa and Shadow Reload or whatever part it was that started off at 2 and went down to 1, is that some of these cards just cost way too much compared to just blowing something up in the face. So having Will of Light, having this cost 1, and it's a retain, and it activates all the other retains, can actually be really good. So we don't have too much in the way of retain mechanics right now. And if we ever do start getting that, Orlea is going to be the backbone of those teams. So it's nice that she's getting some stuff preemptively to make that archetype ready for when it gets more fleshed out. The next change is for Haru, who I don't have. I missed the banner because I played like right after that. But they're going to upgrade her anchor shot, which is this one. The devs didn't say the amount, but they said that the anchor shot damage will be increased, the base damage, and in addition, the cost increase effect of Way Anchor will be removed, improving the overall feel of using anchor shot, enhancing the effectiveness of Ego Manifestation Phase 2. Now, if that sounds confusing, at least at the end, I guess I'll explain that too, but... So Manifest Ego is how the game deals with duplicate heroes, and you can have up to 6 dupes, which is consistent with Epic 7, which is Smilegate's other game of this nature, although it's not a card game, but yeah, you could have up to, I think, 5 or 6 dupes for a character. And with every character, 2 is the biggest one. You know, 1's always a nice quality of life thing. 2 is like mechanically enhancing the character. And so they're going to buff Ego Manifestation too. So if you have a couple dupes of Haru, then you're going to be happy because this gets better. Next up are Yuki buffs, which is something people wanted. And I wasn't quite sure how they do it because I think one of the core issues with Yuki is that she is a damage dealer, but she's focused on doing big area attacks, big cleaves on the enemies. And a lot of the hard fights in the game don't have tons of ads. So it's always like you against a single enemy, or in Chaos, sometimes it's you against 2 enemies. which meant that Yuki just kind of falls off because she's not a single target focused character. And I was kind of wondering how they would change that, because you don't want her to be a single target damage monster, because then all of a sudden she's, you know, just great everywhere. So if she was supposed to have a niche, I kind of wanted them to lean into it, and it looks like they're still sticking to it. So in terms of Yuki, Flash Slash, which was honestly a fine card, but they're going to increase the base damage on this. I guess for 190 to everything was a bit low, and even though she gets some bonus damage depending on what the epiphany is, just having this increase overall would be nice. So I would think that just looking at the number, because I forget how much bonus damage I have on her from potential, but if Flash Slash ends up around kind of like what Rapid Slash is at, you know, around like 220 to 250 on everything, then I could see that being pretty useful, and that'd be honestly pretty nice too. The next one is Trickery Strike, is just getting extra damage for hitting the target, and most of them already hit the target, so they're just going to increase the damage, so it's another single target option, to the point where I would imagine a lot of the Yuki decks going forward, if you want to split it between attacking everything and single targets, then you can do that, and instead of duping Flash, you probably dupe Trickery Strike instead, because that's the single target one, and that has some extra stuff you can do, like in this case, this one's really good, drawing extra cards. The last change for Yuki is going to be Freezing Blade, getting extra bonus damage, and honestly, even at the base version, 60% damage to everything for having Inspiration enabled and used is kind of low. Like 60 is not much. This turns into, like, for me, it was turning into like, I don't know, 70 to 90 damage most of the time. That kind of feels like crap. So they're going to increase the damage overall. And as far as the epiphanies go, I'm not sure what the values will end at, but for instance, this one goes up to 90. So is it going to go a little bit further, like 120? And, you know, then you really have a threatening AoE. Or if you want to stay in the vein of single target, you can keep using this one where it damages a random enemy. But if you're fighting one enemy and it's just the boss, then you hit that enemy. And having this go up to like 160, 180 or something like that might actually be too much. So we'll see how they end up doing it with this, because the thing with Yuki and her cards is that she can draw her own cards constantly, and being able to just keep doing that with extra epiphanies and then getting rewarded for it, you know, she just cycles through her own stuff and does targeted drawing all the time. Next up is Chizuru, definitely one of my favorite damage dealers, just because I think the playstyle is pretty fun, of massive single target and then just blow it up with your very cool card that you create. And I didn't think she'd get any buffs, but they're going to give her some buffs too. And the first one is the effect of Karmic Flames, which is how she sets up shackles and does her whole mechanic of making the blade, happens. And I guess I should put that up too. But with her, it's in Karmic Flames. So you add Curse Shackles, and every time you hit that target and get this Will-O-Wisp stack that goes up to 5, when you get 5, you create a Shadow of the Moon card. And every time you create one, and it sticks together because it keeps binding is what the mechanic is, it keeps getting stronger up to level 5. And so that's her whole game plan, is to debuff one thing, use multiple hitting cards, like cards that hit multiple times, to sit there and generate extra stacks until this blade gets to level 5, and then she throws it. Although I think a lot of skilled Chizuru play comes down to understanding when to throw the sword out, and not always waiting for 5. Sometimes you don't need to wait for 5. And being able to throw it out at 3 is often good enough in most cases. Or even 1 or 2 just to spend the AP so you don't float it. Though Chizuru, they're saying that the First Shackles effect will be enhanced and the cost will be reduced on certain epiphanies. Can't really tell what that is without any examples. Inhibit, this is her own personal debuff where she makes it so because Chizuru is providing AP discounts and efficiency through her own card, they don't want it to get too out of control where everyone else who can generate AP stacks with her, and then you have, you know, an extra 5 essentially AP per turn because of all the discounts and generations. So they wanted to make that harder, which is why they had inhibit to begin with. But now she can generate AP through her own cards and effects. So I'm assuming this means if you ever get a Divine Epiphany that has +1 AP, it's not going to be denied anymore. She can spend that card and then get +1. So it's a nice little buff for herself. Bound at Dusk, this is the same card that does inhibit, or the inhibit mechanic. And this is all it's been. So you get the inhibit status, and then the base version is decreasing 1 random card cost for another combatant by 1 until you use the card. What's changing is the base version is going to have discounting on 2 cards, or a discount on 2 cards, which is kind of cool because if I'm not mistaken, that's one of the epiphanies, which is the first one. It says decreased cost of 2 random cards until used by 1. So are they going to make this the base one? It's very close because the base one is other combatants. And then the first epiphany is a higher discount, but it's random cards. So it could be her own cards as well. So I guess this will still be a small upgrade, but is this like an epiphany you pick now? Or do you go for something else? I don't know. We'll have to see if they give her anything else before she comes out. The last 2 changes for Chizuru are that Moonlight of the High Tide, those are ego skill. This will get bonus damage. And something really cool about Shadow of the Moon is they're going to change it so this will stack if it's in the graveyard or the draw pile. And that seems like a small thing, but it's really nice because this way it thins itself out of the deck. So if you have a dupe or whatever of Shadow of the Moon and you have one in your hand and all that, you don't have to draw the other 2 copies of it after you generate one. They'll just stack all the time. And that actually might open up something else in terms of like build diversity, because you might be able to focus more on something like these basic attack builds where you get 2 hits on Shadow of the Moon, so you can keep stacking up 1 Shadow of the Moon to be super powerful, and then you're already generating extra Will-O-Wisp because you can spam stuff like Moon Slash if you have this Oni Hunt upgrade. The last few adjustments are for Khali and Magna and Hugo, and I think that's it. Oh, Rin too. But yeah, so Khali, we don't really know the extent of these because they haven't said them here, and I guess we're just gonna have to wait for the patch before we know definitively. But otherwise, Khali, damage and shield gain going up on Upward Slash, Overpower, and Vulture Ejection. Pretty nice. Magna, I don't have Magna, and I'm not sure if they quite understand what to do with Magna because I only see 2 things. And it's that Iron Fist will get damage increase and Ice Wall will get shield increased. But I know people tend to rate Magna a bit weaker than Khali, and Vanguards in general aren't that strong right now, so I don't know if they need to do more or if they're gonna change the other stuff involving Vanguards, and that might be enough. So we'll have to see with that. If you're a Magna player and you know anything about this, let me know if this is good or bad. Or, I mean, it's obviously good because it's an upside, but like, is it enough? I don't know. Hugo, someone I did not think needed buffs, but Hunting Instincts, which is his main buff card where he starts throwing dingoes and doing the follow-up coordinated attacks, some of the selected epiphanies will have initiation. So that means it starts in your hand, you don't have to go fishing for it. I didn't think he needed buffs, but this is still just a nice quality of life thing where you don't have to pull out the Hunting Instincts by, turn 3 or 4 when it doesn't matter as much. So you can start stacking it right away. I guess that's cool. Hugo previously relied on using Hunting Instincts at the very start of combat as a dominant strategy, which results in heavy reliance on specific epiphanies, the ones with initiation. This improvement, an initiation effect to be added to Hunting Instinct related epiphanies, reducing reliance on a single option. So that could be cool. Rin, I do not have Rin, but I only clarified that I don't have her just because I don't want to assume that I know how the character works, but I'm just going to read it anyway. Dark Mist Secret Art Destruction adds the Dark Mist stance effect to certain epiphanies. Conditions for Dark Mist Blade will be removed from certain epiphanies. I mean, I really have no idea. It just sounds like her. Personal buff will be added to some and then removed from others. I guess we'll have to see when it comes out. Dark Mist Inner Art, damage amount increase effects will be increased. So the increase will increase. Dark Mist Secret Art Black Dance, thought it was a Blade Dance, increase card hit count. So that's kind of cool. Extra hits are always nice. Partner improvements. My goodness, we have just a few more here. But for partners, we have Westmacott, I think was the Yuki partner. Let's go take a quick look. So as far as partners go, I believe, is there a list? I don't just want that. Yeah, as far as the partners go, Westmacott, I believe, yeah. I think this was the Yuki partner. It is. And so they're going to change it so she gets 40% damage instead of 20 on the next attack card used. Just realized I skipped Asteria, so I'll have to go back. But yeah, for Westmacott, instead of the ego skill being cost 3 to move a card to the hand from draw pile and then draw a card, it's going to be cost 2 and you draw 2 cards. So that's much nicer. That's a much cheaper version of the skill and you draw 2 cards. So it's just straight improvements. So I guess another thing they're doing to buff Yuki is to buff her partner. So hopefully you had both. Asteria's use skill is going up as well. So instead of 20% damage amount to the next attack card used by the combatant, it's going to be 40. So they're going to double the effectiveness. Sounds great. And the final one is Chizuru's partner, which is Itsuku. And with her, it's a very small adjustment. They're just going to make her skill here cost 3 instead of 4, which is fine, because 4 is a little bit too much for that, but it was still usable. Having it at 3 is going to be a lot nicer. Some memory fragment set changes. So these are the little trinkets and gear that you relentlessly grind and optimize to put on your characters, because they do add a ton of stats, and you should be doing that. And they're changing the one that was primarily made for Chizuru, because she's the only one that really took advantage of this. And for Orb of Inhibition, although as I said, I don't have Rin, so if Rin hits multiple times, it would work for her too. And the Orb of Inhibition set, instead of having this ramping effect where you have to hit the enemies multiple times, 2 or more times with, an attack card to get a stacking buff, so you have to spend 2 cards to even charge it up to what it's supposed to be. And then you have the buff, but already you spent probably 1 or 2 or 3 AP. They're going to change it, so instead, that set just gives a flat 30% damage bonus to void cards that hit 2 or more times. So the same thing, you don't have to stack it, and the damage bonus is higher, and it's immediate. So I like that. That's a very good improvement overall. Another 4-piece set getting buffed here is Instinctual Growth, and this is what it did before. So if you have more than 4 cards in your hand, instinct card damage goes up by 20. This is pretty good for Khali specifically, because she would always have, a lot of cards being retained, the Vulture injections. So now you get to the Vulture ejections. So you'd be able to get the damage on that. But now they're going to change it to, instead of being 4 cards in hand, it's only 3. And that should make it more accessible, not just for Khali, but maybe someone like Narja or even Serenial as well. Although I think Serenial's best set's still going to be the other Judgment one. The final set to get buffed is, I was honestly really surprised at how fast this happened, is Spark of Passion. Because Spark of Passion used to, well, the way the wording was is that it would only work on attack cards. So if you did damage with your attack card, it would just be plus 20%. However, characters like Selena that shoot off turn as extra effects or follow-ups, it didn't lower the count of 5 on the set. So you could have the set turned on and then she just shoots indefinitely for 20% bonus damage. And they adjusted that. And because of that, the Spark of Passion set kind of sucked after. But now it's being changed to where when you use an upgrade card, the damage, instead of being just 20% on passion cards for the next 5, it's just permanent. So anytime you have passion cards, you just get permanent 20% damage if you used an upgrade card. And I'm assuming this means the entire fight, because this just said for the next 5. So it didn't have like an expiration time. And ultimately, those are some pretty good changes for these sets, because right now, a lot of the meta picks are Executioner set, which is a 2-piece. So anyone that does damage usually has Executioner on. And you would pick either Blackwing and something else, or if you're like Narja, you'd pick Tetra's Authority and something else. But it was always like either a couple 2-piece sets, and you just focus on the same ones, which would be, as I said, Executioner, Blackwing, and something else. And some of these 4-piece sets got left behind. So I like the idea of being able to throw in some different 4-piece sets that are a little bit stronger and make them more useful. And I think that's going to be more fun overall for the health of the game. 2 pieces of gear that you find in Chaos got changed. The first one is Psionic Combat Suit, where you could infinitely stack thick shield if you exhaust all your cards, is now stopping at 5 times per turn, so you can get a maximum of 150% shield instead of 300% shield or higher, and having 600 shield by the time the boss hits you. So can't do that anymore. And then the other one is a piece of gear I don't have on me, but it's called Brainwave Blocking Helmet, and whenever you draw a card from an ability, you get 40% fixed shield, and that caps at 5 as well, so you can get up to 200%. The last piece of relevant info here, besides the list on monster cards, which I'm not going to go through for the sake of time and because I don't use monster cards right now, is they're nerfing 4 of the common cards. The first one's Wanderer of the Void, and I understand, like, this card was super good. All it did is make it so the enemy's action count doesn't increase when you spend a card. This is really powerful though, because there are some fights in the game, like for instance in Simulation, you can challenge 2 bosses during the week. The second boss, if you spend too many cards after it acts and it gets up to 5, it just duffs you in the face, and you would just play this and it would never happen. But also, there were some other bosses where this was just, in general, super powerful against. Looking at you, Blue Pot Ghoul, with all your ghouls and your freaking 2 turns per action. I hated that. And Wanderer of the Void just neutered those entirely. And the way they're nerfing the card is just adding Exhaust. And totally understandable. It needed to be nerfed. Feels bad, but that's because it was too strong. So I totally understand. Another one is Rally. And I understand because Rally as a neutral card was just free card draw. Like, it increased enemy action count and it was haste, so it never ticked down the enemy action count. So this was just a free cycle every time it popped up. Ultimately, that is pretty good. And so what they're doing to Rally is it's going to have an exhaust count of 2. So if you play it 2 times, it's gone. But it's going to be the same card, just limited. You can't play it the entire fight. The next neutral card getting buffed here is Acid Gas, and it's going to have an exhaust tag on it, but it's also going to cost 0. And the Impair goes up to 3. I understand why it's getting buffed, because, well, relatively buffed, is because it doesn't seem like that powerful. At least I'm not quite sure where Acid Gas was supposed to be super crazy to use. Like I said, there's a couple bosses, like Foretold Ruin, the Chaos in there, a lot of shields pop up, and sometimes like Swamp of Justice. And as I said, one of the challenge bosses likes to shield a lot. But otherwise, shield's not that common or too annoying to get past, I find. So I don't usually see a benefit to Acid Gas, but maybe it's nerfing it or changing it preemptively before they add stuff, kind of like future-proofing. So we'll see how that goes. And then in the same vein of shield damage, we have Tactical Action is getting changed, where it's just a buff and you do extra damage against shields, and it's being changed from 15% to 25%. So you can do 25 bonus damage to shields instead of just the regular 15%. And the fact that it's on Ranger and Hunter is a bit odd, because Selena, for instance, has piercing damage like in her base kit, and that bypasses shield. But otherwise, I mean, it's just good overall, especially if this applies to the whole party, I just realized. The last card nerf is a monster card, and it's Spirit Key Fox, because it duplicates the card. And duplication's already proven to be an incredibly powerful mechanic. It's something that's very limited during your run. And I guess that's what it meant when it said you can only cap dupes up to 4, because I forgot this card existed. And having it so that duplicating multiple times, you know, if you have like a bunch of copies of this, you don't get to do that anymore. So that's totally fine, understandable. Instead, what it's going to do is it's going to have you pick a card and then apply retrieve to it. And that's really not that great. You know, it's helpful, but it's like the power level is so much lower than before, and I'm wondering how it's going to interact with the new system for Faint Memory calculating monster cards. Alright, that's it for the video. Thanks for watching. I know it was a bit of a long one. I forgot the patch notes were this extensive, but I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you're thinking below in the comments. Questions, concerns, other stuff you want me to talk about. If you like Chaos Zero Nightmare, I wouldn't mind being able to do that. But otherwise, yeah, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.